Good evening, everyone. Thanks for showing up on a Sunday night. It's 8:30 Eastern Time. I don't know what time it is where you're watching from, but again, thanks for being here. Tonight we're going to talk about, or I'm going to talk about the common data set and how you can use that data to do better research and finding colleges, particularly colleges that can offer your student merit scholarships, but we'll talk about all the other data that's in the common data set that you might find interesting. And before we get started, I would love to know who's here tonight. If you can share what grade in high school your student is, where you're watching from, and if you've actually even taken a look at the common data set or how much you know about it. So just gives me a sense of, how much knowledge people have who have shown up tonight. And while you can put that in the chat, while you do that, I will just tell you my general standard housekeeping, which is that this is recorded. We send out a link tomorrow. Because this is a public event, we also put this up on our YouTube channel, so you can go find it anytime in the future. And this is actually technically a Zoom meeting, not a webinar. And the only reason I say that is because if you can keep yourself muted, that's better because sometimes we hear a lot of background noises. But if you truly have a question and you want to unmute yourself, feel free. That's helpful as well. And it's nice to have a dialogue with people. And sometimes it's just easier to ask your questions that way. So, okay. I see there's 10th graders, 11th graders. Oh, wait, somebody said, I'm just starting to explore. That's perfectly fine. I knew nothing about the data set, so I'm looking forward to learning. Okay, great. So I'm glad all you guys are here. You're here at the perfect time. I will say, unfortunately, the college admissions process, and I'm sure if you're going through this for the first time, coming up with your student, you've heard it can be stressful, overwhelming, a little crazy. I'm not going to deny that. I mean, there's definitely ways to approach it with calmness. And quite honestly, the earlier you start, that helps a lot. And what I've always tried to do, and the people who work with me, is to educate parents about the process earlier in high school so that you are aware, just like as any complicated process that we go through in life, whether, buying a house isn't always, straightforward. I'm trying to think of other complicated things. If you've ever had a health crisis dealing with with hospitals and doctors that aren't always straightforward. And the more you know, you're just a better consumer. You can ask better questions, and you will get, honestly, better results because you know a little bit more of what you're doing rather than the person who waits to the very end and kind of doesn't really educate themselves and basically loses opportunities. So anyhow, that's just my quick speech, and I am going to share my screen and we can get started. Okay. Oop, here we go. Okay. Great. I think everybody, you guys should be able to see me now. Let me just get the chat back up so I can see any questions you have. And feel free, put questions in the chat as we go along. I'm just trying to see. Oh, okay. I mean, we have a nice sized crowd tonight, about 50 people, but it's not huge. So feel free to ask questions. Okay. So I'm going to tell you what the common data set is. I'm going to pull up a sample and we're going to go through what one looks like. And then I will describe what I think are some of the more important pieces of data that you should be looking at. And then the last, I will show we actually did develop a tool that makes it easier to do all this type of research and primarily uses a lot of data from the common data set. Okay, so The common data set is basically a collaborative between three organizations, the College Board, U.S. News and World Report, and Peterson's. I know I don't know this for a fact, but my gut says that I think that it was U.S. News and World Report that started this because they wanted to get data from the colleges in a common way, therefore the phrase common data set, so that they could use the data as part of their rankings. And this did start, the common data set, I don't have an exact date, but it definitely started 20 plus years ago. So it's been around for a while. In fact, I think it was just last week, and the U.S. News and World Report released their most current college rankings. I have to say, I haven't even looked at them myself. I honestly haven't looked at U.S. News and World Report rankings for several years because they've just, in some ways, just don't have as much weight anymore because people have access to a lot of the information and people are doing their own research and they're not relying on, quite honestly, an outdated methodology that U.S. News and World Report uses to, rank schools. And I think we've also realized, what is the big difference between a ranking, high up, like 10 versus 20, not really a huge ranking, even a huge difference. Sometimes there's really not even a big difference between if you're like ranked 20th and 40. So it doesn't carry as much prestige as it used to. But basically, these three organizations still kind of run this initiative, the Common Data Set. And I'm going to show you what one looks like. But again, the name, as it implies, is asking the colleges for specific information, and then the colleges providing it in a common format. And that just made it easier early on for places like U.S. News and World Report to compile the information. So the other source of information that colleges send data to is actually the government, and that data set is called IPEDS. There's an overlap of data. Some of the data that gets sent to the government to IPEDS is similar to what's in the common data set, but I personally think that the data that's in the common data set, which isn't an overlap with what's into the government, is richer. It's just more, it's just better information that's going to help you make decisions. The other slight issue with the government's data is just there's always been a lag time between when the colleges share the information, when the government, pulls it together and cleans it and gets it up. There's usually could be like a 10-month lag time versus when the common data set information is available. So that's another difference between the two. And I'll be honest, the third difference, and we don't really know what's going to happen, I think we will see in the next year, is that the people who have worked and maintain IPEDS, because of all the changes in Washington, there are many, many fewer of them. So it's not clear if the support's going to be there to maintain that data in the future. So that's another issue potentially in the future going forward with IPEDS. But again, common data set is really kind of run by these nonprofit/private companies, and so they don't have any government say into how it's managed or maintained. Okay, so obviously you guys know who the College Board is. It administers and creates the SATs and the APs and other curriculum and tests. U.S. News and World Report, they're a publisher, they're media. So Peterson's, you might not be familiar with. So Peterson's is a data company, and they are the only source where anybody else who wants access to all the common data set information can license it. So if there's any website that is saying that they are using common data set information, most likely, because it's a really tedious job to go gather it all, most likely they are licensing it from Peterson's. But what's interesting is that doesn't make all the websites the same just because they might be licensing the data from Peterson's, because Peterson's has so much data and the common data set has so much data, and it just depends on what pieces of data these companies choose to license and display. And I have definitely noticed that at least the data that I'm interested in, and that was one of the reasons why we created our own tool, other websites, for whatever reason, didn't think it was as valuable and never licensed it and never showed it. But we do, and I'll tell you what that data is. Okay, so let's keep going. Oh, okay. So somebody said, what about when you sign up for niche or niche? I'm never really sure what the right pronunciation is. And they give you offers if you provide more data. Should you also be applying through this website? So I think what you're referring to is niche has started a program or service called Direct Admissions. Actually, they, to tell you the truth, didn't start it, but they are now a website that does it a lot. The Common App, which you may not be familiar with yet, because that's a website that your students will start using when they start the admissions process as a rising senior, probably in the summer before senior year. They also offer direct admission. So basically what direct admissions are these days, and it really is only, I would say this is the most popular, this is the year it's become most popular. It started a few years ago, but really this year it's gotten a lot of traction. So direct admissions is when your student fills out and gives like their information in a profile. In this case, they're putting it on niche with the common data set. I'm sorry, with the Common App, they would be filling it on the Common App. And then those companies or organizations are giving access, or actually, I shouldn't say, they're not actually giving access. What they've done is made arrangements with colleges to say, if we could give you the students that you're interested in, tell us the criteria of the type of student you're looking for, and then we will identify those students and then offer them an admission to the college, and sometimes offer them additional scholarship at the time that we offer them an admission or to admit them. So the student actually doesn't have to do anything other than to share their information on the website, and then niche or Common App is kind of doing the screening. And because they've made these pre-arrangements with colleges in advance, they know what criteria the colleges are willing to admit those students on and to offer money. And to tell you the truth, it's basically their test scores and or GPA. It could be dependent on a particular major as well. And so it's a kind of like a preliminary offer. I mean, it is a true offer, but at that point, your student has to take some additional steps to actually make it official. And sometimes they might ask for a little bit more information to determine if they're going to give their student a scholarship or not. So to answer your question, sure. I mean, there is no harm in your student, signing up for these websites, giving the information, and then you can see what offers they get from different colleges. There's no obligation, obviously, to accept any of the offers. You're just kind of getting an early peek at what colleges might be interested in your students. All that being said, the types of colleges that are more interested in doing a direct admission this time tend to be, less competitive, because, the more competitive or more selective colleges don't need to try and find students. They have a plethora of students who are applying. So just keep that in mind, but it's always nice to see, what colleges are interested in your student, and to also get a quick early read on maybe what type of scholarship money that they should be giving them. So that's kind of my explanation. When's the best time to post all information like SAT, GPA scores? 11th grade last quarter. Yes, that's a good time to start entering information into those websites, because obviously you want to enter information with your students' best scores, with their most recent GPA, and if your GPA changes, you're going to have to remember, or want them to remember, to go in and change this information if anything changes along the way. Okay. So Oh, this was just like giving you a pro and con about using common data set versus iPads. so let me just explain. I don't think it's on the next page. Okay, yeah. Let me give you a timing of how the data works for the common data set. So um, here's just an example. If you were going to a website and you were looking at the common data set that said for the, this is academic year that they're quoting. So it's the academic year of 2023 to 2024. So that means that it's covering information of students that have enrolled in college in the fall of 2023 and have been in college, through, wait, I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember if I'm saying this right. Covers academic year 2020. Yeah. So, okay, so those students have enrolled in college in 2023 and they're going to stay there through 2024. So, but the thing you have to remember is if you're looking at admissions data that I'm going to show you, if a student is enrolling in this example, 2023, then the admissions data was from the year before, right? It was from the fall of 2022 through the winter of 2023, because so common data set is based on the students who enroll in that school. So if you're looking at admissions data, it's got to be from kind of like the season right before those students enrolled, because we can't get the current year because those students haven't enrolled yet. So so because the common data set is waiting for the students to start in the fall, and then it takes a while to get all this data, because again, when you start seeing it, it's data that's collected from lots of different parts of the university. To tell you, the data usually isn't kind of all gathered until the winter. And then it's sent to some of these organizations, or colleges publicly publish it on their own website. And that doesn't usually happen until the spring. So let's actually take this current year. So well, school just started. Technically, right, we're in the academic year 2025, 2026. There is not going to be a common data set that's covering this academic year yet, because it just started, right? So the most recent common data set is going to cover the previous academic year, which was 2024 to 2025. And that data was published starting in the spring of 2025, because the colleges had to wait until the students enrolled, and they had to start gathering it from all the different parts of the college. Then they cleaned it themselves, and then they finally sent it out to the organizations that we just talked about. And some colleges actually didn't even publish it until the summer of 2025. So so there's just a natural lag a little bit in this data. And so when we're looking at admissions data, from the most recent common data set, it's not going to be from last year, because those students just enrolled. It's going to be from the year before. But I say all that because it's not bad. There's not these huge swings year to year, in the admission rate, in financial aid, there's maybe minor tweaks. So the fact that you're kind of looking at, data that's what you would think might be a year old is not horrible. And also, as long as you're comparing apples to apples, every school that you're looking at is from the same time frame. Your comparisons are valid, and it's still good information. Okay, so I'm going to jump now and show you an actual common data set, and then we'll talk through it. And you can go on your own. You can pick any school that you might be interested. I'm just using Tulane as the example, but you basically can take any school. I'm going to go and do Tulane, and in Google, I'm going to say Tulane Common Data Set, and this is the page that's going to pull up from the Google search. If you pick a particular school and put it into Google, what we're hoping is that it just is making it easier, that Google's going to bring you directly to the web page on the college's website where they share their common data set. Because they don't usually have it in a menu item. It's a little bit buried, but obviously that's why we use Google, and it makes it easy. I would say that around 90% of colleges share their common data sets publicly. There is no enforcement, like a college does not have to share their data publicly. It is their data. And so there are a few colleges who choose not to. Maybe they think it's too sensitive. Maybe they just want to kind of like keep it close to themselves, for lots of different reasons. And actually recently, it was just maybe about 2 weeks ago, the New York Times financial journalist Ron Lieber, he's very interested in all of this stuff, and I've helped him over the years. He actually did an article where he kind of highlighted, I don't know, about 5 or 6 prominent colleges that choose not to share their common data set. And he tried to honestly shame them into sharing it. I think he was able to get 1 or 2 of them to finally release it. But my point is, most colleges do, but you might run into 1 or 2 which you truly can't find it, and it's because they've chosen to keep it hidden. Okay, let me unshare for a second, or maybe I don't have to. I can just, okay. Oops. Wait, I think I lost you guys for a minute. Okay, let me stop sharing and, oh, I know what I did. Okay. Now let me share again. Okay, so here's Google. Let me get chat back. Somebody's saying, is there a specific website that posts this common data, or is it specific to each school? Well, I think I actually just explained it. It's really specific to each school. One of the issues is that there aren't that many websites that kind of share a lot of the common data set and let you do good searching through it. So again, that was the reason why we created our tool, which I'll show you about. But it's good to go through a college's specific common data set, and then you'll see the value of the tool that we created. So I'm just going to put into link, oops, here, Tulane University common data set. Okay. Okay, so you can see the most recent common data set was 2024, 2025. Again, that's the academic year. So that was for students who started and were enrolled in Tulane in 2024 and then went through the academic year 2025. We probably won't see the 2025, 2026 common data set until March or April of this year, or maybe even a little later. But again, just to kind of give you a time frame. And you can also see not every school, but a lot of them do give you past ones. If there's a particular piece of data that you find interesting and maybe you want to go look in to see how that might have changed over time, you can go to the past common data sets to check it out. Okay. Oh, one more thing. Again, majority of the time the colleges share it, it's a PDF. Once in a while, it's in an Excel spreadsheet. Once in a while, some other college decides that they're just going to create their own format and sharing the information. But I would say, a good 75%, 80% of the colleges have it in this format. This is the traditional format that they all use. So there's several sections. I can't even remember how many, I don't know, up to like maybe section K or L. They're all alphabetical. And then within each section, there's a lot of information. I am not going through every section because it's just too much. I'm going to jump around and show you what I think is the most important. But, feel free at some other point if you want to go through, because maybe you've come across something you think is kind of interesting. And if you do, I'd love to hear. So let me know. Okay, as this section A, just general information, their address, their URLs, what type of college or organization is it? What type of diplomas do they give out? Okay, section B is interesting. This is how many students actually enrolled. Again, for that, this would be enrolled in 2020, fall of 2024. So you can see the breakdown of the current, well, almost current undergraduates. You can see how many male versus female. You can see what might be interesting is how many undergraduates to graduate students there are, because that would give you a sense of, what the focus is on the campus. I'm just going to point out for Tulane, and this isn't the reason why I pick it, but I think it's kind of interesting. You can see kind of clearly that Tulane, you could kind of spin this either way. You can say Tulane has an issue in that they're not getting enough men at the college, or you can say it that Tulane attracts a lot more women than they do men. It's just a fact here, right? Here are the numbers. It's just pretty clear. And again, these are the students who enroll. So I point this out because the other thing I love about the common data set is, to me, it's clues. It's clues about what's going on at that college, and clues that you might be able to use kind of as you're thinking about admissions and where your student might apply, or where they might have a better chance. So honestly, I would say if your student is male, right, and kind of fits the criteria of what Tulane's looking for, or even might be slightly weaker than what, or I shouldn't want to say weaker, or less strong than what Tulane is looking for, they might have a better chance of getting in, because I bet you Tulane wants to even out the male versus female ratio. Most schools do. So I'm sure that Tulane is trying their hardest to get more men to apply, or that hit their academic criteria. So that's just a little clue that you pick up along the way as it relates to Tulane. There might be other schools where it's just the opposite, where there might be more men that enroll versus women. And if you find that school, I would say if you're a female and you want to apply, you probably have a stronger chance than a male applying to that school. Okay, so that's information you can get out of this section. This is about different ethnicities that, or of the student population at that school. Again, a few things that might be interesting. Our non-residents here are international students. So to tell you the truth, in this day and age, with what's going on in higher education and in some, just a fact, and visa issues, international students may not be coming to the U.S. as much anymore, or at least in the next year or two. And this is where you can see how much of the previous student population international students made up of that at that school. The reason why that might be worthwhile to understand is if a school had basically admitted a lot of international students, like I would say NYU probably has a high percentage. And the likelihood is that they're not going to be able to admit as many in the future, because I don't think as many international students are going to come in. So that means that they're going to need to admit, obviously, more U.S. residents. So again, just a little clue as to what's going on, on campus, and how admissions and what they're looking for might be shifting over time. Oh, do I know which colleges will have more male on the West Coast? I don't know off the bat, but when we get to showing up our search tool, we might be able to look for that. So I'll remember that question, and we'll try and look on the database. Okay. And again, one other reason why you might want to look at this data is, depending on, what, your student, what your, sorry, background is. If if your student might want to be at a school that has a stronger Hispanic population, you would want to look at this information to understand what the undergraduate makeup is. Okay. I'm going to keep going, and the next section, this is probably the first most important section. or first important section that you should spend some time in. So this is the admission data for the first year students. So again, so it says it right here. This is for provide the number of degree-seeking first year students who applied, were admitted, and enrolled in fall of 2024. So this is all about the students who just, enrolled last fall, and how many applied, and how many were accepted, and how many ultimately enrolled. So, and this is where on all of the admission numbers that you see quoted in different places, this is where it comes from. Or so you can see, again, this is this male versus female ratio for Tulane. They just don't get as many men applying. Here's the number. So it's not like they have a high percentage of men applying and they choose not to accept them. They just get fewer males applying. So you can see 12,000 applied, 20,000 females applied, and then how many were actually admitted. This is, again, male versus female. Usually the numbers, when you see them quoted in places, they're rolling it up. They're not breaking out male versus female. They're just kind of say, this is the number of students who applied, this is the number of students who were accepted, and then this is the number of students who actually enrolled. So kind of this is their admission funnel, from applied, accepted, and enrolled. Not every school shares this information, but here's a different view of it about which of the students were in-state students versus out-of-state. For Tulane, it's not that important, or here's international too, because most of the students are out of state. They're not a public university. But if you were to pull up like, UNC or UVA, and if they shared this information, you'd obviously see a big leaning towards the number of in-state students that they take. Those particular schools I mentioned actually have like a mandate that they have to take a certain percentage. But there might be another state school who doesn't have a mandate, but you can see what their leanings are in terms of what percentage of the population are going to be in-state versus out-of-state students. This isn't anything you can really use in the admissions process. It's really more kind of like towards the end. But if your student were to be waitlisted, you can kind of go back here and say, okay, how many students did they waitlist last year? To tell you the truth, there's not always a connection between how many students they waitlisted one year versus the next, but you might just kind of be curious to look at, did they even waitlist students last year, and how many students ultimately got off the waitlist? So again, here's that information. Here is some information about the types or the number of units your student has to have in high school in order to be eligible to go to that college. I mean, these are kind of basic. The only thing that usually stands out is there's always a question about how many years of foreign language does a student need to have. Some students would like, to hear that you only need 2. For a lot of schools, you do only need 2 years of a foreign language, but for a school like Tulane and other schools of its caliber or higher, you definitely need 3 years. So again, here's just a spot if you wanted to confirm what the different criteria are for the classes that your student needs to take in high school. Okay, here's a section I find personally very interesting. This isn't on a lot of websites. Actually, this is not on any really websites that I know of, except ours, because I thought it was interesting. And it's called the admission factors. And there are academic admission factors and then non-academic admission factors. I'm trying to get this off at the bottom, but and then to me, this is like a rubric that the admissions office is kind of telling you what they find important when they're looking at, or not as important when they're looking at a student's application. So the different criteria are, or the different rankings are very important, considered, or not considered. I would say, again, majority of colleges are going to say the rigor of the school record is important, right? How hard are the classes that your student is taking. Class rank, it seems to be all over the place these days because so many high schools aren't even providing a class rank. So I'm surprised that Tulane is even marked it. But I guess what they're saying is if a school rank is important, if a school rank is shared, they think it's very important. But the two most important things that you'll always see are the rigor of the school record and the academic GPA. As I like to quote a admissions dean who we do a lot of webinars with, she likes to remind people that basically the schools are in the business of academics. So they have to make sure that the students who they're looking for and are accepting can handle whatever the level is of the academics that is happening at that particular college. So that's why they're always going to look at the rigor and the GPA. And then the next piece, the standardized tests, right, is also a little bit now all over the place. For the schools that are requiring test scores, then I'm going to, most likely you will see an X in the very important column. So I find it interesting that a school like Tulane, who is test optional, is of course if they're test optional, they can't say test scores are very important, but they're telling you that they're important, as opposed to test optional schools that say that they're just considered. So to me, the fact that, and I'm going to show you another piece of data a little further on that backs up my theory, is that if Tulane is test optional, but they're saying test scores are important, then if your student is sharing a test score, they like that and they are going to use it to kind of determine how strong or not that strong your student is among the other students who are applying. And then obviously recommendations are important. So somebody's asking, what does school rigor mean? How many honors classes or APs? Yes. So it means how many honors classes or how many APs your student took at their high school. But the caveat to that is it's always in comparison to what your high school offers. So, if your high school only offers 5 APs, then there's no way that your student can take 10 because they're just not available. And so colleges look at, when they are determining the rigor of your students' transcript, two things. Either the admissions officer who's looking at it is usually been assigned to your region or to your high school. So they're pretty familiar with your high school. They know what your high school offers. So they know when they're looking at a student's transcript, did this student take the most rigorous courses available? And they'll know, if the school offers APs and how many. They'll know if the school offers an IB program or not. So so it's basically a point of reference. And then the second piece of information is something called a school profile, which every high school, I mean, again, they don't have to, but the majority of them do, put together a profile of what, their school looks like in terms of number of students who graduate, what the different types of colleges that their graduates attend, how many take SATs, how many graduate and go on to college, what's the distribution of a test score at that high school, what's the distribution of grades, what does the high school offer APs. So it's kind of like a little cheat sheet to say, let me give you a quick roadmap of what goes on at this high school. And college admissions officers get that as well. So they're always looking at the school profile, their knowledge of the high school, and then comparing that to your student's transcript. And again, your individual high school's school profile should be public. And a lot of high schools actually do share it publicly on their website. And if your school doesn't, you should absolutely ask the guidance counselor, does our school have one, and can you get a copy? So do you mind explaining why they consider geographic residence? Okay, good question. A lot of colleges, definitely over the past decade or even before that, want, they want a diversity of students on campus. So they don't always, I mean, this isn't for every college, but a lot of colleges do these days. So they might want to make sure, Tulane is in New Orleans. They tend to get a lot of students from the Northeast. They might want to make sure or put an emphasis on, hey, we really want students from, Washington State, because we want to kind of pull, more students from different parts of the country, so that the type of student who's at campus is just a diversity. So that's why they might put a little bit of an emphasis on geographically where that student is coming from. So you can see here that, yeah, basically Tulane is considering it, because they don't want everybody who's always from the same places, or, they might tend to get a lot of students from certain states, but they want to see, okay, can we pull in other students from other states, again, so that we can have a diverse undergraduate population. Okay, so I find looking at this standardized test score kind of interesting, particularly if a school is test optional. Where do they place their X? Is it under important or considered? And that to me is, if your student has a test score and it's better than what we call the 50th percentile, then they should be sharing it with the school, because the school kind of wants to see the test score if your student has it, even though they're claiming they're test optional. We call them like test optional-ish, because they're kind of, they're not completely test optional. Will be like, we really don't care, and if you share it, you share it. If you don't, you don't. But then if that were the case, then Tulane probably should have marked this as considered. Okay, let's keep going. So this is information about test scores, SAT, ACT. Okay, here's the other piece of information I find interesting. I don't honestly know of any website that shares this. I mean, like in a search way, other than we do, and not every college shares it, but since the onset of test optional, one of the questions has always been, okay, how many students have really sharing their test scores? Because we have no idea. This isn't exactly that information, but it's close to it, and again, it's a clue. So what this is telling us of the students who were accepted and enrolled. So the students who enrolled that fall, how many of those students submitted their SAT or ACT when they applied to Tulane? So the ideal data that we would want to know is, of the students who applied, how many submitted their test scores and how many didn't. The colleges don't share that because they still want to, keep you guessing. But this is a little bit of a clue, and so this is saying that of the students who enrolled that fall, 13% of them actually submitted their test scores when they applied, or their SAT scores, and 28% of them submitted their ACT scores. So all you can do is kind of guess that if those are the students who actually enrolled, probably the students who they accepted they probably had even like a higher percentage, meaning that of the students who Tulane accepted, I'm going to at least guess that 20%, maybe higher, submitted their test scores or SAT scores, and maybe 35% submitted their ACT scores. And then again, you can kind of go backwards and maybe guess that of how many students who applied and submitted these scores or didn't. It's not it's not a science, it's not perfect, but it just is giving you a little bit of a clue as to how the process is working at Tulane. Okay, other important information, and a lot of places do share this information, is the breakdown of test scores. And this is only of the students who, again, enrolled. It's not of the students who applied. But it does give you a picture of the academic strength of the students who are actually now going to Tulane. So shows you the 25th percentile, which is kind of like at the lower end, and then the 75th percentile of the test scores, and then obviously right in the middle is the 50th percentile. But why this is important is, and actually I should say that even though this information is pretty, easily available, for whatever reason, most websites only show you the 50th percentile. But if you're looking for schools that can offer your student merit scholarships, I guess the one thing I didn't quickly explain, and we're going to look at data related to merit scholarships, is that schools want to use merit scholarships. Merit scholarships are money that the school, it's their money that they're using to give as scholarships to students. They're using it to attract, in most cases, trying to attract a stronger student to the college. It's their way of kind of like upping themselves in the rankings, even though we don't think the rankings are that important anymore. But the kind of the stronger academic student you can get, then it kind of lifts the whole school in terms of its profile. So someone like Tulane, if they're giving merit scholarship money, because merit scholarship money is not going to be based on whether or not your family has financial need. It's only based on your student's academics. They're going to give this type of money to the stronger student because they want to attract that student who might be at the upper end of a type of student who would normally come to Tulane. So they're probably going to give money only to a student who has a 1,500 or higher in on their SATs. Because again, that's the higher end of the type of student that comes to Tulane, and they want to attract more of those academically strong students. So it's really important to know what the 75th percentile is. The 50 percentile is nice to know, and basically that tells you if your student's test score is in that range, they have a good chance of being accepted because that's kind of what the majority of the students look like. But if you want money from a college, your student should be applying to schools where their test scores are in that 75th percentile or higher, because that's the range at which the college is going to say, oh, okay, you're a strong candidate. You're a really strong candidate. We really want you. We're going to offer you extra money to make coming to our school more attractive. So in this case, the 75th percentile for Tulane obviously is 1,500. And on the ACT, it is the composite 34. Usually the schools aren't looking, they're not looking at least for the purposes of merit scholarship money, they're not looking at the breakdown between the, English and the math or the different sections of the ACT. They're looking at the combined score. So that's important information. The other important information is, this is just like this isn't necessarily that important, but they share, what percent of the school, graduating high school did the students come from? Did they come from the top 10%? Did the top quarter? This kind of correlates a little bit to class rank, but so many high schools don't do class rank anymore that it doesn't really matter. So somebody's asking, are these test scores usually from those students who provided scores when they applied? Yes, it is. It's the test scores that the students used in their application process. We had one school tell us they collect test scores from all attending students once they commit, and that is what is reported. I have not heard that, and that's very interesting. Do you remember which school that is? I will kind of start asking schools, but it's always been to my knowledge that they're using test scores from the admissions process, not necessarily asking students once they get their ELON. Okay, thanks for sharing. I will start asking some of the colleges that. I don't know if ELON's a one-off, but something to dig into. Thanks for sharing. Okay, GPA. I have to tell you, this is a little bit of a disappointment. This is great that Tulane is sharing it. A lot of colleges don't share this GPA information. It annoyed me for a really long time until we started working with this former dean of admission. And I asked her, like, why isn't the GPA information, like, why isn't it shared? Why isn't it out there? Particularly if schools are test optional and a lot of kids aren't submitting their test scores. I mean, you need something to be comparing your students' profile with, right? To know whether or not they are right for that college, and why aren't they sharing GPAs? So it's not malicious, I will tell you that. The reason why a lot of colleges don't share GPAs is really it's just a processing issue. So many high schools, sorry, calculate their GPAs in different ways. Colleges tend to recalculate a subset of the GPAs, meaning they will recalculate your student's GPA just based on the core subjects that are most important. And they just can't do that for all the students that have applied always. And so they don't standardize this information. So if it's not standardized, they can't share it back in the common data set. And that's the reason why you will see a lot of colleges don't have this information. Mostly all the colleges have the SAT scores is because they don't have to do any work for that, right? The students are submitting that. It's already standardized by ACT and SAT, and they're just like reporting and passing the information on. For the GPA, the schools have to do this recalculation, and even though they might do it in their process for admissions, they don't do it for common data set purposes. A lot of colleges don't, so that's why it's frustrating. Good question. Somebody's asking, are these weighted or unweighted GPAs? I would always assume, unless you see otherwise on a college's website, that they tend to be unweighted GPAs. Some colleges will make a note and they will say what we are sharing is a weighted GPA, but most colleges, want to use an unweighted GPA. It's the cleanest kind of apples to apples comparison that they can make. Otherwise, comparing the way one school weights a GPA versus another, again, is just harder. But every once in a while, there will be a school that is using weighted GPAs, and the reason why I'm kind of like telling you to just look out for it is if that school is also sharing or giving out scholarship money and they're using the GPA as the criteria to give out money, you want to know whether the school is looking at the weighted or the unweighted GPA for scholarship purposes. Okay, let's keep going. So they'll share deadline information here. Personally, I always say the source of truth for deadline information is the college's website. Sure, they might have have it here in the PDF. I'm sorry, in the common data set PDF. But by the time that they've released this PDF, they might have changed some date on a deadline, and it's always important to get the deadlines directly from the college's website. The admissions page is the most up-to-date information. Let's keep going. This is again where they might tell you that what other types of deadlines that they offer. Do they offer early decision like Tulane does? They'll tell you, the date that the early decision deadline is and when they'll be notifying it back. Do they offer early action? Yes, they do. What's kind of interesting is so many schools now these days are offering early decision 1, which is, here, actually Tulane is sharing it. So their early decision 1 is November 1st. And then they will, and then they will notify students on December 15th. And then they have what they call early decision 2, which is like a second opportunity for a different set of students to apply early decision. And that deadline is January 15th. So now Tulane has early decision 1, early decision 2, early action, and regular decision. There are some schools now that are also doing early action 2. So Tulane isn't doing it, but they might have a second early action deadline, which might be sometime in December, or it could even be January 1st. It could be the same deadline as regular, but if you say I want to apply early action, you'll just get an earlier response. So anyhow, it's a lot constantly changing with colleges in terms of their deadlines, the scholarships they give, the criteria. That's why every year it's always, we spend a lot of time scouring the websites and trying to get the most up-to-date information. Okay. This is transfer information. If you're, applying, a lot of people on tonight are in 10th and 11th grade, so it's really not that interesting or worthwhile for you. When's the best? Oh, and actually, there's another deadline. You're so right that I didn't mention is rolling admission. So that would have been in that section. And so they'll tell you if they have rolling admission, what date it starts. So you're asking when will be the best time to apply for rolling admission. For colleges that have rolling admission, I do say that it's worth applying within the, if you can, within the first 2 weeks of it being open. They use rolling admission for a purpose that they want to fill up their classes as quickly as possible. And as the name implies, it's kind of like a first come, first serve. So the earlier you can apply, closest to when they start accepting applications, the better. Okay. Let's go skip. There's one more. Oh, these are just all, let's see. These are the different programs they have at college. So Tulane has an honors program. They do independent studies. They do internships. So you could look at that. Student life. So this is about how many students might, I'll just give one example, might live on campus versus off campus. Again, that might be important to you and your student to know kind of the mix of where students are living, how many are in fraternities and sororities, how if there's a high percentage of students who are older. So again, these percentages give you a sense of what the social life might be. These are clubs, activities that are offered, what types of dorms. Okay, and then these are expenses. So this is let's see. Check here if your students are not. Okay, right. So what's a little, I would look at these numbers for tuition or room and board, but I would honestly use the numbers directly from the website because from the college's website, because they will have the most up-to-date information. When this common data set is released, it probably doesn't have the most up-to-date because, again, it's a timing issue. Most colleges release their newest or updated tuition and it's called cost of attendance information, usually in June, or July. And that's because that's when the Board of Trustees, they set those numbers. It's usually in that June, July timeframe. This information we know came out before then. And so by just a timing issue, it's not likely to be the most recent tuition and room and board information to look at. So again, is it going to be far off? No, but if you want the most accurate, I would go directly to the website. Okay, so this is the last section I'm going to go over. And this is where the information is about financial aid and merit scholarships, section H. Okay, all about financial aid. So if you are a student or family that you think you might have financial need, meaning that you might get some need-based aid, you might get some loans offered to you from the college. You want to look at this section because this section will tell you what the average need-based aid award that the college gives and to what percentage of students who actually have need. And I know I'm kind of glossing over a big explanation of how you even figure out whether you have need. That's a little complicated, and that's honestly for another webinar. But if you know anything about whether or not you might be eligible for need-based aid, you would want to look at, let's see, this number here, line I. It says on average the percent of need that was met of students who were awarded any need-based aid. So what this means is, so Tulane is, I'm just going to round up, says we meet 96% of a student's need. Let's just assume, I'm not going to explain how we calculate it, but a student actually is determined to have need, and they have, $40,000 in need. So that what that's saying is that that family can afford to pay something to college, but they can't afford to pay the full tuition, and they have this gap of $40,000. And Tulane is saying, you know what? If you're a student that we want to admit, if we admit you, we are going to give you enough money to cover 96% of the 40,000 that you can't cover yourself. That's pretty generous. So Tulane is a generous school for families who have financial need. The most generous schools are the schools that have the most money, and they tend to be all the elite schools. So if you look at, all the Ivies, all the schools kind of like what they call the near Ivies, all those, very prestigious schools. If you looked at this number on their common data set, you would see 100%. So, again, just naming them because they're in this category, but schools like Princeton. So if your family has $40,000 in need, Princeton's saying, okay, we're going to give you enough money to cover that 40,000, 100% of need. So that's, again, those schools are very generous if you have financial need and you have the academic profile to get into them. Obviously, you have to be accepted to make this, to even get this offer, but I'm just kind of like showing you the different types of schools. There are a lot of other schools that say, okay, you have need, financial need, but we just don't have the money. We can only offer you 50% of whatever your financial need is. Some schools, it could be 30%. So that's why if you're a family who you think you might have financial need, you're going to want to know what this number is before your student applies. Because what good is it to apply to a school where you can't, you off the bat, pay for it in full, you have financial need, and then you find out that the school can't cover most of your financial need. If your student applies there and decides to go, then the only way you're going to cover that need is by loans, and that's when people get themselves into trouble. So that's why it's important to know what these numbers are, and that you can look for them and to do the research before your student applies, maybe even before you even go visit schools. Yes, I'm going to get to merit scholarships next. Okay, so 95%, they meet 95% of need. On average, the financial aid package that they, offer is $64,000 because they're, generous and they're meeting most of the students' need. So that's important to know. The next section is section H2A. And if you're a family who doesn't have financial need and you're looking for those colleges that are going to offer merit scholarships to your student based on their academics, this is your section. Okay, so first of all, it tells you how many students at that school don't have need. I didn't do we actually, in our tool, we do the numbers for you, but so I don't know what 416 is of the number of students, but we'll look up Tulane and we'll get that percentage. But so basically, we're gonna find out what the percentages of the students who even go to Tulane and who have no need, right? And then of those students, how many of them actually get merit scholarships? So actually, sorry, there are 416 students who have no need get merit scholarships, and the average merit scholarship that they get is $21,000. It's not in the same category at Tulane as the money that's given to financial aid, right? But for a student who doesn't have financial need, they're giving, $21,000 on average. Some students might be a little higher, some students might be a little lower. And this is the best way for students or families to lower the cost of college if you don't have financial need. The biggest scholarship your student's going to get is from the college they apply to and choose to attend. It's not going to come from a private scholarship. Of course, there are those handful of students on the edge who win the Coca-Cola scholarship, or win a scholarship from Microsoft, and they, and they're in the news. It happens, yes, but the percentage of that the number of students who get that? Very, very few. The percentage of students who get merit scholarships from the college they attend to is very high. So you want to find the colleges who give out merit scholarships. Not every college does. And you want to find the college where your students' academics put them in that top 75th percentile. And you want to find a college that is offering a good amount in merit scholarships. Okay, so I'm going to do one last thing because I don't want to run too late on a Sunday night. I'm going to show you our tool that actually pulls all this information together for all the colleges and makes it much easier to do this research. Somebody said, is this number for 1 year or 4? It's for 1 year. It's for 1 year of going to college. What defines need? Is it under 110,000? That's a great question. Actually, there are some schools now, and this is again something that's been in flux and changing this year. A lot of schools are coming out and saying, if you make 200,000 and less, we will actually give you free tuition. So the definition of what a family is that will get need varies college to college. Honestly, if you're 110,000 and below, and you have average assets or a few assets, you will probably get need at most schools. But the reason why I'm quoting 200,000 is because that's now a higher income level that schools are recognizing that even if you make 200,000, because the cost of college has gotten so expensive, you should be a family that should also get need. And so that level is rising. Does the common data set include information on scholarship displacement? I don't think it does. I don't want to. I honestly have never really looked deeply into it, but I've never come across it. So what somebody is asking about scholarship displacement is if your student receives a private scholarship, which is kind of outside the college, whatever, it could be a local private scholarship, it could be a national private scholarship. Some colleges will say, if you're a family that also is getting need-based aid from that college, they will say, great, congratulations to your child. They got $10,000 in private scholarships. Because they got $10,000 in private scholarships, we're going to reduce how much we're offering your child because you now have this extra $10,000, so we'll give you $10,000 less. And then net, really the student is not better off. They're actually the same. And the college basically displaced the money that they were going to give, knowing that the student is getting private scholarship money from outside the college. So I don't think that the common data set actually tells you that information, but you should absolutely, I would ask the financial aid offices directly if that's their policy or not. Unfortunately, I'm going to say that you're going to find majority of colleges do scholarship displacement, but there's been a movement in the past few years to get some schools to not do it. Okay, so let me show you this tool and then I'll go back to the questions. So this is our tool. It's called Insights, and I'll give you the URL. Oops. You can create a free account. The free account will give you a taste of what I'm going to show you. It won't give you access to all the features and all the data, but you will get a sense of how to use it. So we created it because I felt that the common data set was such valuable information. I wanted to be able to search it. I wanted to be able to filter it. I wanted to be able to sort it. And there was no place where I could get access to everybody's common data set information. And then I also wanted to kind of show some of these other important pieces of the common data set that even if there were other websites that had some of the common data set information, they weren't showing all of what I thought was important. So that's the reason why we created this. And there's one other thing, and I'll show you once we get in there. There's data that we've crowdsourced, which is particular to us. Okay, so I already have an account, so I'm just going to log straight in, but this is where you could set up a free one. So this is the dashboard. I'm just going to go through it quickly. Basically, you tell us what year your student is graduating high school, and then depending on the year, up here, the My Road section, we have different articles to kind of tell you the different things you should be doing for that year and making, and the different information that you should have learned. So that's just up in this section. Then a section here called lists. As you search and as you discover different colleges, you might want to create your own list. You might want to have, lists of schools you're going to visit, or lists of schools where your student can get the most merit scholarships, or lists of schools where that have the major that your student is interested in. So you can create, if you have a paid account, you can create as many lists as you want. You can name them whatever you want, and then they show up here. As your student gets to the point of applying, we're trying to kind of move you along the process. So then you identify which schools your student is applying to, and then they show up in the section called Application Tracker. And in that section, I'll show you quickly, it lists, now you can kind of like focus on a smaller list, that these are the schools your student is applying to. These are the deadlines that they have to make sure that they have their applications in by. These are the financial aid deadlines that you need to make sure you fill out the forms by. This is the fee. This is the net cost, because there's different ways that you can estimate your net cost. So this kind of gives you just a smaller view of just the colleges your student is applying to, and to kind of help you kind of move along the process. Okay, and then finally, as you're going through the admissions process, when your student gets offers, whether they're those direct admit offers or later on in the process, you come back and you can tell us what schools your student got accepted to, and then what the offer was that they received. So how much money did they get, or did they get need-based aid? And then this information is shared anonymously with other students or other families. So if you get an offer, for example here, like Penn State, and you enter it here, you can now see all the offers from other students at Penn State who got an offer. It's again all anonymous, and then you can see, hey, did the money that Penn State offered me, was that actually good? Like, did I get a fair offer compared to other students, or did I not? And maybe I might want to go back and ask the school for more money. So honestly, there's no place to kind of know what other students got at Penn State unless you're asking your friends. But even if you're asking your friends, it's still like a small sample size. And so here, this is national information that families are sharing back and forth. And the other thing is, you can also look at previous years and kind of say, oh, like how did my offer compare to last year? Were they giving out the same amount of money, or less or more? Do I have a tutorial? We've actually had this tool for a few years, but this version of the tool is just like a few months old. We're in the process of finishing up the tutorial. So we should have it like ready pretty soon. Honestly, I'm telling you, within 2 weeks. We don't have one like today, but we're close to it. Okay. Then we've got a ton of videos. These are our webinars on all the different topics that we've talked about, what is financial aid, what are honors programs, what is SAI. You might not be familiar with that yet. That's related to filling out your FAFSA. So lots of great information here. A lot of them are with admission deans that I mentioned. A lot of them are with some really good private college counselors. So that's good information. And then if you ever want like one-on-one help, these are different services. And then we partner with a lot of companies too here. So these are deals from partners we have. Okay, now let me go into the meat of this platform, which is the database. So this is a listing of 3,900 colleges and all of this data, okay, that you can look at. Again, most of it is the common data set data. So we've kind of made smaller views for you because we know that it could be overwhelming. We have a view that we call is just our R2C picks. These is like, again, the pieces of data that I think are most valuable that people should be looking at. So that's like a smaller subset. If you wanted to just look at admissions data, you could look at it here by clicking on just admissions. If you wanted to look at the financial data, which would be kind of the merit scholarships, the need-based aid, and the cost of attendance, that would be here. So you can look at smaller views. You can actually even make your own view. That is like here, manage your view. You can decide which of these columns you want to look at and which ones you don't, and then you could name your view. Okay, but the most valuable thing here are these filters. So I can filter the database on any field that I have in that table. What was the question that somebody had? Oh, show me a school where the percent of males is higher on the West Coast. So let me see if we can do that. Let's, we actually have one thing we have to just fix. I can't do by region yet because there's a glitch that we have to fix. But let's just say California. How did I get to the filter? Okay, right here at the top of the table, there's the word filter. So just click on that and then it pops out. So I'm just going to say California. Okay, just and we'll say Washington State. Okay, and let's see, let's see, male versus female. Oh, I'm not sure we do. Sorry about that. Let me see when, I thought we did, but maybe we don't. Oh, we do. Percent men. Okay. So let me go back here. Did it save my, okay, it saved my, so let me find that filter. It's men. So percent undergraduate men, right? So we want to maybe find a school where the percentage of men is basically greater than, I'll say 55%, because that means that it's more men than women. So we'll say greater than or equal to 55 and apply the filters. Okay, so I only put in 2 states. I only put in California and Washington, and there are 31 schools where the male population is at least 55% or more of the total undergraduates. So that was a pretty quick and easy way of getting that information. And now you have those schools. So, so hopefully the person who asked for that, you can come into Insights and do that filter. Okay, but let me do a few other filters. I'm going to clear. Let's reset. So some of the basic ones that I like to do for people is going back to this concept of your student. You want to have your student apply to a college where their test scores or their GPA is in the 75th percentile and that the school also offers merit scholarship money. So there's a field here. Here it is, the SAT 75th percentile or the ACT 75th percentile. So we want to say, let's say my student has a 1350. So we want to find a school where the 75th percentile is greater than or equal to 1350, or you could even say 1300, but we'll just say 1350. Actually, yeah, okay, that's good. And then we want to find a school that, in addition, also offers merit scholarship money. So you see here this line that says average merit award to the freshman without need. We want to find a school that offers like at least $5,000 or more. Okay, and let's apply those filters. So now there's 206 schools where my child's 1350 is in the 75th percentile or more, and the school offers at least $5,000 or more of merit scholarships. So now I can go through and maybe I want to sort some of these columns to kind of get more closer to the schools I might be interested in. I'm just going to go to the column that has the merit award. So this is the average merit award for freshmen without need. This is what we filtered on. But then we also have a column where we've done the math for you, and we've just kind of subtracted the average merit award from the cost of attendance. uh, because it's the net cost, right, that you're also interested in. So it looks like we have a few different pieces of missing information we got to fill in. But if we don't, okay, so I can now sort this column. The net includes housing. Yes, it does. So the net is based on the total cost of attendance, and the cost of attendance includes tuition, room and board, any like additional fees that the college might have, and an estimated travel expense. So it does include housing. And now I've just sorted this. Okay, these two we need to kind of fix these two schools. I have a feeling we don't have the most recent cost of attendance. That's why they're coming up negative. But we'll clean that up as soon as we finish. But now I can see which schools where my student was in the 75th percentile, and they give merit, what the net could be of those schools. So it says here Duke, right, could get me, Duke gives out a pretty generous merit scholarships. It could get me a net cost of $12,000. But there's one other piece of information we need to look at, and that's in this column here, what says what percentage of students actually receive merit. So even though Duke does have a few very generous merit scholarships, only 3% of students are getting it. So I might get really excited. Oh my God, I could send my student to Duke for $12,000, and we don't even have to have financial need. But that's really not going to be likely, or it's a very small chance. And I happen to also know that you have to fill out additional scholarship information to get that money. So you have to look at several different pieces of information to kind of really understand what schools you should be digging into and researching more. So why is Duke only giving 3%? Is that accurate? It is accurate. It's, basically they give merit scholarships, but they only give it to very few students, and they have a competitive process in which they give out that money. But another school, like, again, and you might not be familiar with it, but Knox College, look, they're giving to 100% of students who don't have financial need. In this case, this is an example of a school. If a school is giving merit scholarships to 100% of the students who apply, to me, basically they're giving everybody a discount. They're not really using their merit money as selectively at other schools. I mean, we've got like the two extremes here. We've got Duke, which gives it to very few students, and then Knox, who are giving it to 100% of the students. There's a lot of schools in between that give it to like 50 or 60% of the students. So let's just keep scrolling and see what else we find. Okay. We've got Web Institute. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. Actually, somebody posted about it pretty recently in the Paying for College 101 group, that their student is very happy there. So here's an example where, again, they're giving it also to 100% of the students, but your net cost could be $30,000 as opposed to, let's see what their cost of attendance is. Their cost of attendance is $87,000. So if your student is strong academically for web and they get the merit scholarships, you can bring that cost down to $30,000. Let's look at some others. Beloit's a pretty generous school. So Beloit's cost of attendance is, I'm just rounding it up, is $80,000. And wow, I didn't realize that Beloit gives it also to 100% of the students. And so everybody who applies there, gets accepted, and is strong academically, is basically getting an average merit scholarship of $35,000. So University of Richmond, that's a good example. Here's an example where they're not giving it to like 3%, but they're not giving it to 100%. They're giving it to 21% of the students. So most likely they probably have an additional scholarship process. Actually, here we have a link that brings you to University of Richmond. These are the different scholarships that they give to students, and this is the criteria, and this is the deadline, and some of them are automatic, and some of them you actually have to send in additional material. So you can see how there's different layers to this research. So we're helping you kind of go from this really wide picture down to, it's like these are the schools where your student has a good chance of getting in, and these are the schools that you have a good chance of affording, and these are the schools where you might get merit scholarships, or schools where you might get need-based aid. But then you still have to go deeper. And at some point, it's kind of like, I call it like off-road research. You're going to have to go directly to the college's website and start doing research there, because that's always going to have the most accurate and source of truth information. Okay, but so let's go back. So let me show you one other thing. Here's the crowdsourced offers that I was mentioning. If you pay for Insights, you get access to all the crowdsourced offers at any school. If you're a senior and you have an offer that you share, and you're not a paying member of the platform, anybody as a senior can share their offer, but they can only see offer information at the schools for the that they're sharing an offer for. If you're a paying member, you can see crowdsourced offers at any school. So let's look at University of Richmond. Okay, and you can sort it by academic year. Okay, so this was this past year. These are students who just went through the admissions process. They just started now, and this is the students who were accepted and shared their information. And this is both their profile of who they are and the money that they received. So we see what state they're from. We see the type of GPA they had. If they have a dash, it means that they didn't submit their SAT or ACT scores when they applied. What deadline that they applied for, and whether or not they got need-based aid or merit scholarships. So you can see here, and then the first column is also what SAI range that they are in. We don't ask to share people's household income because we think that's too much, privacy information. But we do ask for people's SAI, and what the SAI, it gives you a general sense of how financially strong a family is. So if a family has an SAI of 60,000 or above, they're probably not getting need-based aid. Definitely if they've got an SAI of 80,000, they're not getting need-based aid. So if you're looking at any of these families with the higher SAIs, then that's why their student was basically getting merit scholarships. But you can see here, a family with an SAI of 15 to 20,000, they are probably getting need-based aid, and that's why you can see here that this was the need-based aid that Richmond gave that family. So let's scroll a little bit further down. Here's a family with an SAI of 60,000. They're from New Jersey. The student had a 4.0. They submitted their SAT, which is a very strong SAT, 1570, and they got 33,000, which I think was a little higher than what the average was that Richmond shared in their common data set. So that's kind of interesting. Let's keep going. Let's see, here are more families with need-based aid. This is a family who has a high SAI, and the student applied, they got in, but they didn't get offered any merit money. That's why there's nothing listed. So, and then you can kind of go back to previous years. Now we're into the academic year with 2024-2025, which was the year before. So this is just really interesting information. I wouldn't use this again as scientific, because I can't say that we actually have a large enough sample set at every college. Some schools we do, like Penn State, we have a lot. Fordham, we have a lot. So there you could probably be more statistical if you wanted to. But I would really just tell people use this for directional information to give you a sense of the type of student that is truly admitted and the type of money that the college is offering. And another way you can always also see this information is if you click on the college name, we have a detail page for every college. And then if you go to the aid and merit scholarship section, oops, all of these college offers are also listed on this page as well. Okay, so I've gone an hour and a half. Sorry, that was actually my daughter's calling me because I have to talk to her about something. So I think I'm going to end, but I really hope that this was information valuable, and I appreciate the majority of the people who stayed on. I really encourage families that are here, if you've got a student in 10th and 11th grade, it's the perfect time to start this research. You should get a handle on how much college costs, the types of colleges your student wants to go to, and their costs. Do they offer merit scholarships? Are you going to be a family who might be eligible for need-based aid? Actually, one last quick tip is the way you find out your SAI, you don't have to wait until your student's a senior. You can go right now and fill out the FAFSA. Let me get you the link. It's on the Federal Student Aid website, studentaid.gov. Actually, here, I will put it here. I will share, let me share this page quickly. Okay, here's this website. Go to fill out the FAFSA. Again, this is actually, somebody else gave us this tip just a few months ago, and I think it's brilliant. Anybody can go and fill out a FAFSA, and you don't have to have a student going to college. And the best thing is, forget about all these kind of websites or calculators that estimate your SAI. Why estimate it if you could get it exactly from the government? And if you don't have a student applying, and then nobody sees that information except for you, and it just kind of gets thrown away next year. And then you know, when it's your student's actual year that you need to fill it out, then you go and fill it out, and then you at that point, you put in the names of the colleges that your student is applying to, and then the colleges get that information. But until you put in college numbers, which is their code ID numbers, nobody ever sees that information. And in the meantime, you get an accurate calculation of what your SAI is. And then you will come to another webinar that we do that explains what your SAI is all about and how you use it, but that's too much information for tonight. Okay, I hope this was valuable. Nice to meet everybody, and see you again soon. SAI means Student Aid Index. Okay, take care. Bye.